purpose of this video is to give an overview of how to securely fix a chimney bracket such as this onto a chimney using this lashing kit, which you can see in front of you here, so that you'll be able to come along and mount a pole and put something like a UHF aerial on top of it. And this obviously be quite common, okay? Mounting poles with UHF on chimneys. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to give an overview of the different steps in it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up this guy wire and I'm going to unravel it here and feed it back out, okay? So the very initial step is I'm going to grab this and I'm going to feed it around this J-bolt here, okay? So we have this J-bolt here, so we can see, and we fed past a certain amount of wire past the top of it, and I just hold it in with my thumb like this, and I just wrap it around once. See that? I'm going to wrap it around the second time, and there, and at that point I'll just feed it off like this. So you can see it's wrapped around a number of times. And now what I do is I just grab it with my finger again, hold the wire, wrap it again, around the wire again, and now a final time. So the idea here is that now what we have is, we have this wire securely wrapped around this J-bolt, so that when we go on a later point and put tension on this wire, it'll actually tighten into position rather than loosen and pull off, which would obviously be disastrous, okay? So what we want to do now is we need to attach this J-bolt onto this chimney bracket here. So what we're going to do is we're going to be mounting the bracket, the chimney bracket like that. So we're going to be running the guy wire in from this side. So what I'm going to do is just to pull it out here so you can see. I'll just push in the J-bolt like that, and I'll pick up this nut, screw it on, so it's just securely in position, okay? I don't want to over tighten it here, just a few turns here is sufficient. And what we do now is, we'll just come along and we'll run this guy wire around the chimney, run it down along, and what we're going to do here is, I'd normally just be holding it into position by hand at this point with my knee, so we can see the actual thing here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up this J-bolt here, and I'm going to try to gauge back, how far back should I try to twist it. So basically here, okay? So I'm just going to mark that with my finger. I come along. Now if we bend it and back at the wrong point and it's too short, we won't be able to get the J-bolt into the hole afterwards. And if we do it too long, it means that when we tighten it in, we won't get it sufficiently tight to leave it safe on the chimney. So what we'll do here is basically a repeat of the earlier process. So what we're doing here is we simply come, and now I'll wrap it once, twice, and 3 times, okay? Now we can see here that the guy wire, the amount extending out is far too long. So what we'll actually do is, we'll just come along here, we'll get the snips like this, and we'll just cut it like this, okay? So then what we'll do is we'll grab it, so you can see here again, we'll wrap it once, twice, 3 times into position, and just feed it down along the cable, okay? So as we feed it back around, the next step in the process is here. I'm just going to feed this back in here. So we want the guy wire to go around in a more or less straight line. We don't want it certainly running at quite long angles, okay? So what we'll do then is, I can simply come along here and we'll just tighten it up repeatedly. What we do here is, we can see that I've actually left this extremely tight, but this can be a positive thing, okay? So we'll just take as much tension out of this wire as I can. Just give me 1 second there. I'll just try to take that tension out. Now, we can see here. Sorry, this is a little bit unconventional. It's tough as a one-man job. What we'll do here is we have it wrapped around like that. So the next step is we want to go to the 4 different corners here, and we want to slide in this plate here. So we'll just start at this corner over here. What we'll do is we slide it along, and we bring it in. And the idea of this, there's a couple of uses to these actual plates. The first thing is to make sure that the wire is going straight around. The second thing is to make sure it doesn't actually cut into the concrete, that it's not damaging the chimney. And the final thing then is make sure that it's not actually loosening over a period of time as it eats in. Obviously there'll be no give in this metal here, so once we have it tightened it should stay tight. So we repeat it here on the next corner, which is here, and we'll simply come along and we'll slide this in. And then we come along to the final corner that's over here. And this is often the trickiest one to get in. So we can just come along, sometimes you get snips, and actually just feed it into position. And we just feed it around the corner there. Okay? So what I'm going to use now is I'm just going to use this 15mm socket that I have here. And I'll just start off by using this to hand tighten this into position. So what we'll do here is we just tighten this in. So what we're trying to do at this point is we're just going to take all the tension out of this cable, or slackness out of this cable, so that it'll be good and tight on the actual chimney. Now I actually start off and doing it on this side here because I'm hand tightening it here, and I just like to take it out of this one here because there's less freedom here to use my ratchet at a later point, simply because of the tightness of this particular angle. So we'll partly tighten it there, and the next one here we go to take tension out here. So I'll just use the ratchet at this point here and just fit it in, and we'll just tighten it around repeatedly. So normally we'll have the J-bolts almost fully tightened in to take all the slackness out, okay? So I can actually see, and maybe you can see yourself there, this actual tightness there is coming into the cable itself, okay? So it'll happen in two ways. Both the slack in the cable will start disappearing. You can see how straight it is now, but also the loop here will actually start pulling back in on itself. So sometimes it can look like it's quite tight, but it's actually quite another distance to go. We'll just tighten away here. That's it. And then you don't want to do all the tightening on one side. You need to be switching over and back. Otherwise, you can tighten it up, but you'll actually be pulling the chimney bracket off of center here. You can see there anyway, we're making good progress on that. So you just repeat that process on, and you have to sort of use a judgment call on it in terms of how tight you've gotten it. But it's very, very effective way of actually wrapping it around. So we can see there actually, it's like a guitar string there now. So you've got good tension all the way around. So the next step would actually be to come along and put in these U-bolts. So you simply slot them in from this side, run them through, and then we have the nuts we do from the far side. And repeat the same process with the next nut here, and then the same process on the bottom. Slot it through, pick up our nut. These are 13mm nuts now, we're using this. And the last on the J-bolts is actually a 15mm nut on the particular kit I'm using here, but that'd be pretty standard in the industry. So what we'll do here is we'll just fill out these U-bolts the full way. Now if we had a pole such as this, what we'll actually do is we'll come along and we'll slot it all the way down here. And what we'll normally try to do is just maximize the overhang, our reach here, upwards. Now an interesting thing, if you are actually putting an aerial on this, a very good idea is before we put the pole actually up, have the aerial put on top of the pole and fully wired. So when you drop this down, it's maybe tie wrapped to this position here, then you can just run the cable afterwards, run the cable over here, tack it on the chimney and run it down, okay? But you can see the basic process there. So it's fairly straightforward. There's a little bit of effort in it. Certainly the hardest single point in the entire process is where we're trying to join the J-bolt here, the second J-bolt back onto the bracket, because we're trying to do two things at that point. We're trying to judge the length so it's not too long so we can tighten it in, and not too short so it's sufficiently long. So you'd struggle a little bit at that point, and it's very important at that point in struggling to cast an eye around to make sure that the chimney thing is still running in a fairly straight line, because if it's at a very angled thing, obviously this will create a lot of slack in it, make it possibly impossible to tighten it sufficiently afterwards. So that's it anyway, an overview of how to fit a chimney bracket and lashing kit onto your chimney.